Welcome to the Misophonia podcast. This is season 5, episode 21. My name's Adil Ahmad, and I have misophonia. This week, I'm talking to Joannie, who hails from the state of Minnesota, where I also live. She's in her mid-50s and wanted to come on in part to talk about the role she thinks hormones have played throughout her life in relation to her misophonia. We go back to her relatively normal and happy childhood and find out how misophonia may have developed there, how she dealt with being a single mother with misophonia, and how it affected her relationship with her kids, and also some experiences with substance abuse and rehab. We also discuss what it's like to live kind of between two generations, the boomers and Generation X, and how attitudes toward mental health are different. There's a lot packed into this hour. I want to give a shout out to 2 new sponsors on Patreon, Julie and Jennifer. Thank you so much for your contributions to the show. It really means a lot, and it's actually going to help get these transcripts that I keep talking about done accurately and will benefit a lot of people, I think. If you feel like helping, you can go to patreon.com/misophonia podcast to find out how to become a patron and learn about all the various levels and swag that I'm giving away if you're interested in that. And also an even easier and cheaper way to help is just to share the podcast on social media or leave a quick review wherever you listen to the show. All right, now here's my conversation with Joannie. Joannie, I want to welcome you to the podcast.
Thanks.
And what kind of, what kind of work do you do?
I work for a local broadcast media.
Oh, okay.
So a TV station. I work for a TV station. I schedule commercials.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's what keeps it going. Kind of roughly whereabouts in the world are you? In the country, maybe?
I am in southeast Minnesota, western Wisconsin, but I'm originally from the state of Kentucky, on the Kentucky-Ohio border in Cincinnati.
Oh, okay. So interesting. Yeah, because I'm just up in St. Paul, as you probably know from listening to episodes. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I'm in Houston County, Winona County.
Okay. Yeah, I know Winona. I'm only a few years in Minnesota, so some of these names sound familiar, but very cool. Yeah, no, my in-laws are in kind of southwest, so around further southwest than Mankato. So I'm often down in somewhere in southern Minnesota.
It is a beautiful, beautiful. I never thought I'd find any place more beautiful than my home state of Kentucky, but it's beautiful here.
Yeah, and out there everything's kind of wide apart, so it's easy to find a quiet spot. I think is that true? Like, how's your kind of your surroundings?
Right now, my surroundings are my husband and I purchased an old farmhouse that came along with 6.5 acres.
Nice.
It's beautiful. We are so fortunate. We literally physically moved in the weekend that Wisconsin went on lockdown.
Oh.
And we moved in, and I moved in with all my stuff from work, and this is where I'm at.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've been okay. Yes. Was it an abrupt change from wherever you were before?
It was. I was living fairly rural, but not in. Well, it's. I think maybe I need to give just a little structure here because we could wind up bouncing around. I grew up in the state of Kentucky. I moved here when I was 17 years old. Lived in an urban area, not urban, but city.
Yeah.
Until I was in my, I would say, mid to late 40s. I met my second husband, and he is a farm boy. So when I moved in with him, I moved into on a farm with pigs and lots of corn.
Yeah.
And total, you never would have thought I would have wound up here.
Gotcha. Okay. And was misophonia ever any part of any of these kind of decisions to maybe get more or just kind of gravitate towards a rural environment?
No, I truly was just following my husband. That was his lifestyle, and that was how I wound up there is just, I turned into, I don't want to say a farm wife, but I definitely live a lot more secluded than I ever dreamed I would.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
And you're pretty comfortable here, I guess. It seems like it. Or
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
yeah.
It wound up giving me something I never really knew I needed.
Mm,
So
nice.
it's
Well, that
been a
sounds,
beautiful change.
yeah, that's excellent.
Yes.
Well then, yeah, maybe going back like a long ways. When did when did you start noticing that you were, having all these sensitivities?
I would say it was probably um, the preteen,
Yeah.
preteen. I would say probably around 7, 8, 8-ish, 9-ish, around there.
Right.
Um, and it was a horrible reaction to my father's snoring. Just,
Okay. Yeah.
just, I can't even tell you how traumatic it was. I've only come to realize just how traumatic it was once now that I've started to really understand what it is that's going on with me, which did not
Yeah.
come to me until I would say the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
was it obviously he can just start snoring overnight. Was it like he was always snoring and then there was like a day or two or where you just start to really notice it, or maybe you guys were camping or something and in some confined space?
No, we lived in a much smaller house. We were very city, like
Hmm.
my husband is astounded by how close the houses are where I grew up. I
Yeah.
mean, it's, yeah, nothing like what we live now. Um, and I don't ever recall it being an issue. But as I started, now as I'm looking back, going into prepubescence, I just started becoming very sensitive to it. I think it was a gradual thing.
Gotcha.
Um,
Gotcha.
but it brought about such an intense reaction from me.
How did you
Um,
react? Did you wake him up? Did you scream?
well, you just didn't make waves in my house.
Hmm. Hmm.
You just didn't do it. And it was, they didn't understand. I didn't have the words for it. All I knew is that I hated it. And I hated him for making me listen to it.
Yeah.
And as a child, that was just overwhelming to me. I was raised fairly ethnic. Uh, I'm Italian. Um, my grandfather came from
Yeah.
Italy in the like late 1900s. And I was raised fairly ethnic. I got to tell you, it was a factor in our life, as far as how my dad was and the structure of our family. And it's nothing like the world is now.
But
Um,
you were raised pretty. You want to describe kind of what you mean by you were raised in
Fairly
ethnic back
ethnic.
then? Yeah.
Being Italian was part of
Like
our identity.
strong your identity. Right. Right. Okay.
Yeah, that was part of our identity. I can honestly say, although I'm not comparing it to anyone because I don't believe in anyone's worse off than anyone else, but when you talk about, oh, discrimination,
Hmm.
and the struggles of that, I'm thinking my dad could have shared a few stories, actually
Hmm.
more than a few, and it was a factor for me,
Gotcha. Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and, and at a young age, as I'm coming up. This is one of the reasons why I volunteered to do an interview, because I've yet to hear someone of my generation share
Yeah.
share what this condition has been for them, and how it's effective. I had no idea anyone else felt this way.
Yeah. It was. I mean, I've had very few people, but I'm trying to get more. I actually spoke to somebody who's 87 years old last week, so that'll come out
Yeah.
sometime in the next
Yeah,
few
but
months. But
I'm
yeah.
55. I'm
Right. Right.
55 and I grew up, where your parents, they loved me very much, but they just really, am I allowed to swear?
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they really didn't give a shit if you were crying. You sucked it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it just wasn't.
Before the 90s, pretty much. Like, yeah, you.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. So you sucked it up. So was pretty much, yeah. I'm assuming just kind of bottling it up. Was
Oh
there
yeah,
like,
and I shared a room with my parents.
oh, okay. So now,
Yeah,
okay,
I
now I'm getting a
shared a
bit of
room
a
with my
picture.
parents for a period of
Okay.
time. We
Yeah.
had moved my aging grandfather in, and until a room was, although it didn't matter, my dad snored so loud there was literally no place in the house that you could
Okay.
go.
Yeah.
Um, but I would sleep. You ever been to a firing range?
Um,
Like shooting
yeah, yeah.
guns?
I've not been
Okay.
to one, but I can imagine.
Okay. Think about the earphones,
Yeah.
the ear protection
Oh,
that
yeah.
you wear for that. I would have earplugs in and those
Yeah.
on my head, and I would sleep that way. And I
Wow.
would just cry because I couldn't sleep, and it was so traumatizing to me, and there was no escape from it.
And you would
Like
still
no
you
escape.
still hear it through that. I mean, you could
Oh
still
yeah.
hear a little
Oh
bit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exhaustion. I would fall asleep in exhaustion.
Wow. And
Yeah.
just to clarify, you're sleeping with earplugs, with earmuffs, you're crying, and this is kind of a time in history where you're asked to suck it up.
Yeah.
There isn't any right.
Yeah.
No alarm bells go off or anything for people. It's just like, okay, this is a quirk, and this is Joanie's
Quirk.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Quirk.
Did it start to cause
Uh-huh.
any resentment then? You're obviously
Oh,
torn.
big
You're a young
time.
girl who loves your parents, and
Big
you must have
time.
been
I
torn.
hated my dad for it. Hated him.
Mm,
Hated him. Could not. And then was so terrified that I hated him. Why was
yes,
I feeling that way? And how guilty I felt.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
you
it
must
was.
a lot of tears, and the tears must have not just been from the triggers, maybe a little bit from that, from being torn about that. I mean,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
did it start to then proliferate to other sounds, other people around you as well?
Um, no, it's very noise specific.
Okay,
And and I will tell you that I've not had the same level throughout my life.
okay,
Um, and I have come to believe that for me, for me, it is
mm-hmm,
very much affected by hormones.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. I haven't had anyone talk about that, but that'd be interesting. You
Mhm.
want to maybe elaborate a little bit about how you came to that?
Heading
Not maybe
into
not conclusion. Yeah,
puberty was my absolute worst.
yeah.
Just my absolute worst. Um, I would say going into my 20s, uh, I more not as life disrupting,
Mm-hmm.
more quirks.
Yeah.
More of like a quirk. But like mouth eating, I feel so bad for my children. Drove me crazy. Little
Okay.
children can't help but eat with their, they
Right.
can't help it.
Right.
And it would make me wild. And all
Okay.
this time, I'm not questioning anything. I'm like, okay, this is just how I am. Everyone's annoyed like this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how a lot of us feel. But then
Yeah,
I'm sure there are moments
yeah,
when you're like, oh, this is really weird. This
yeah,
feels really
yeah,
weird.
yeah.
And
But
then speaking of guilt, I mean, with your,
oh
if you've
yeah,
got children and you're being triggered, I mean, it's one thing if it's your dad, but then you're looking
yeah.
up to your dad, but now you have children looking up to you.
Hmm.
I mean, I know a lot of us parents kind of check ourselves extra to try to make sure that we're not triggered or we're not kind of setting an example. How did you? I mean, I know it's not easy, but how did you kind of
How did I
negotiate
deal
that?
with it?
Yeah,
Honestly, I did not deal with it well.
yeah,
I
yeah,
did not deal
yeah,
with it well. I did the best I could.
yep,
I did the best I could.
yeah. And
But it would
did
make me wind up like leaving the room.
yeah, sometimes that's the best thing.
I'd have them in their high chairs or whatever, but I
Yeah,
would I would have to, it made me absent.
Mm, mhm, mhm.
I think that's the
Yeah,
best way of putting it. It made me absent.
gotcha, gotcha. Okay, okay. Did that continue? Did your kids? You said your Miss Funny kind of went in waves. As your kids got a little bit older, did that start to kind of subside a little bit?
Um, you know, I'm gonna say no because at where my levels have been at,
Mm-hmm.
how do I want to phrase this? Um, life has a certain amount of distractions.
Yep.
And when I am really under the gun, which I was a single mom, um, I did not get child support. I worked two, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
three jobs, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and with a lot of the just, chaos of life, I didn't have time.
Yeah.
I didn't have time. I was off doing whatever. My brain could not like chime in. And quite frankly, if there was something annoying me, I just got away from it. I mean,
Yeah.
I
Well,
just
you're in
had
survival
to,
mode, right? I
yeah.
mean, like, yeah.
But once you slow down, then, it's just so much more apparent. Life kind of took us, where my daughter's going to play softball and my son's gaming and we're not eating together. It didn't come up, but not by my doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it was just, um, yeah. I mean, life took you. Yeah, life took all of you to, through whatever interests or whatever you had going on, and it just kind of naturally you were not
Yeah,
around each other for the periods where you probably would
yeah,
be the most triggered. So
yeah,
it kind
yeah.
of
We weren't
took care of
having meals
itself.
together. Yeah, we
Yeah,
weren't having
gotcha.
meals together. It just didn't come up.
Right, right.
So it really,
So the circumstance, you didn't
yes,
create this magical environment where you weren't being triggered.
yes.
But
It wasn't by me
if your
having to
son
control
wasn't into
anything.
gaming and your and your daughter wasn't into softball, if they were
Yes.
all into just eating together, it would have been a disaster probably for a while because you don't
It
have
would
time to.
have been really, really, really stressful.
Yeah, yeah, and
It would have
stress
been really stressful.
adds to. I mean, adding to whatever you had overwhelming stress already. I'm sure. Stress is a big exacerbator. So
Hmm.
yeah, on top of the hormones, I mean, stress that we all feel at different points, at different levels, makes this worse. Um, did you ever? I know you said you only found out a couple of years ago that it had a name, but were you ever thinking about maybe I should see some professional for my quirks? It sounds like I
No,
mean you probably didn't even have time if you
no.
thought
I
that, but
it's just I never would have think about the generation that I grew up
yeah,
in.
right,
Very much affects how I think too.
yeah, yeah,
Um, because I got to tell you, even talking to you, I'm being there is still half in my head of you're batshit crazy.
yeah,
It's yeah. But
understandable, yeah,
that being said, I um how do I want to put this? As I have started to age and what goes on with a woman's body when she ages, it just I had no idea. Mad respect for any woman who's made it past this because it's significant. But that is what has really heightened this condition for me now. Um, and the way that I realized it and what really brought it to my attention more, more of me just going, okay, whatever, was we were living in a rented, brand new, like a prefab home. Um, kind of like a glorified double wide, that was in
hmm
a rural setting. And we moved in, and it was rather cheaply made. Within a year, the floorboards would squeak.
yeah,
And the more I became aware of it, the more torturous it became.
Mm-hmm.
And this was literally, if you picture a double wide, it was any place that there was hard flooring, non-carpeted, which was in essence like the entire half of the home. So any place I would do laundry or in the kitchen, or I mean, literally in the bathroom, every place that you live. And there was almost not a space that you could walk where there was not some level of squeaking. And
Right.
and that is what drove me to start finding out what started reading that this has a word, you know, that other people are like this and this is what's going on. I literally, I've been listening to you for what, well, I would say probably, oh, I don't know, at least a year and a half, if not 2 years. And I have yet to hear anyone have this type of, I don't want to say experience with it, but yeah, I kind of feel, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it's not unique, but
yeah. So the experience you're talking about, like, your in your kind of age cohort and demographic, like the kind of hormones you're feeling now.
Well, like I said in the very beginning of this, me personally, I am convinced that it has something. There is something, there's some effect,
Yeah.
cause and effect there
Yeah.
going on. And I think from everything that I've read, it is more prevalent going into puberty.
Yep.
And I think
Seems
that
to be the
there are
trend.
things that substantiate what I suspect is that, at least for me, it's very much been a factor. Because heading into menopause, and I mean, honestly, I was telling you about the squeaking floors. My husband, if he would walk across, it was nothing to him.
Right.
It wouldn't even be like on his radar. He wouldn't even notice it. Me, I felt every single squeak. I would try to explain to him because he thought I was just losing my shit.
Yeah.
I mean, he thought I was just completely, but it was torture.
Right.
It was just torture, but once I started reading, once I sat down with Google and I'm like, okay, do I call a psychologist or
Yeah.
what do I do? And I start typing in, why do I hate this sound? And then I started realizing, oh my God, there's so many other people.
Yep.
This is, I had no idea. I had no clue.
And there's
because you just didn't talk about it.
No, exactly. And like you experienced, most of us, and a lot of people still don't know that they have it. They think it's a quirk or just something that everybody is annoyed by, and they just happen to be a little bit more sensitive. But it's not. It's more than that. It's the fight or flight sensation.
It's completely uncontrollable.
Right.
Yeah.
We barely control it, but it's a struggle.
I can control it, but there's a price to be paid.
Yes, that's what I mean. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, was that your husband,
Yeah.
your current husband, or your ex-husband?
My current husband.
Okay.
He is my current husband. Excuse me. He's my second husband. I've been married twice.
Right. I should say.
Yeah, I've been married twice. My husband and I have been married for about 9.5 years.
Mhm.
We've been together for about 15, 16.
Mhm.
So he always knew that I had my quirks, because, I didn't care for his snoring that much.
Mhm.
And as he started to get worse, the more I couldn't, and life had slowed down enough for me that it was there. So I would go and I would sleep on the couch or something, and he would come out and he would find like the clock. I'd put it in the refrigerator because I couldn't stand the ticking.
Yeah. I've smothered clocks in under winter jackets and whatnot before too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So, he he rolled with it, whatever, so we get a continuous motion clock.
Mm-hmm.
That example is kind of how I have dealt with this all of my life.
Right.
Other than the times that I couldn't, when I was 8 years old and sleeping in the same room with my parents, and you couldn't get away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you obviously ended up marrying, at least the second time, another snorer. So you were just at that point, just used to kind of like working around these issues. It's not like you had a list of things that that were showstoppers.
I always knew. I always knew it was something that I was never going to be able to tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
But well, up until my husband, it was my choice whether or not they slept over.
Right,
So
right.
I could deal with it or not deal with it.
Yeah.
And honestly, with my husband, it started out like in our relationship. Well, we didn't live together for 6 years, so again, I could pick and choose.
Yeah.
And he wasn't snoring every night, which I think is kind of common as you age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know has been for me. And interestingly enough, I snore probably worse than him. And I got to tell you, he could give my dad a run for his money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel bad for him, but it doesn't make him crazy like it makes me crazy.
Are you when you're on the couch here? Do you have the earplugs and the noise headphones on and stuff like that, or you just kind
of? I live by noise canceling earphones.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a pair while we were in the rental place. It was the only way I could function.
And you wear
it was literally the only way I could function. I purposely bought those, and I am not real big in the technology. I am not one that I barely keep up. But I went and I bought a pair, and I bought a Chromebook so I could have it in the kitchen.
Yeah. So you've always got them on.
And I would plug in.
Yeah.
I would plug in.
Right.
The second I had to go in and cook dinner, oh my God, I had a Christmas. Try like people who have no idea what this is.
Right.
And this for me has really kind of come out, I think my loved ones thought I literally lost my mind. And I'm trying to make dinner for Christmas and not be walking around wearing these so I don't have to like explain myself over and over and over. It was torture. It was awful. But they became my best friend.
Yeah.
And I rely on them now to sleep. It's the only way I can sleep.
Do you have any sounds running through your headphones, or
Blizzard?
Blizzard. Oh,
Blizzard
that's a good
sounds.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's the only thing that can cancel out my husband.
Is there an app that you use for that, or did you just record one winter, one southeastern?
There's a YouTube.
Okay, yeah,
just a YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, it was my every night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So so it's pretty. So what about are you looking forward to going back to the office then one day, or is it?
It's so funny. When I had worked the TV station I worked for, I had worked there in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then I had a 10-year break going into, oh my God, hospitality and cooking in restaurant kitchens.
Yeah.
And that was interesting. But once I came back, I remember the HR lady, she was like, if there's anything that you need, let us know, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay. And I'm up at the receptionist desk is where my desk was. Although that wasn't my main function. And the clock behind me, it's like, tick, tick, And I think it took me, I don't know, probably about not even a week or so. And I went back to her office. I'm like, remember when you told me? And she's like, sure, what can I get for you? I said, is it okay if we pick up a continuous motion clock
Yeah. Yeah.
and get reimbursed out of petty cash? And she gave me such a blank look. Like she was just like total blank. And she's like, I never would have thought that's what you were going to ask for when you came in. And I'm like, well, yeah, do you mind? Um, and so that saved me there. But, I went back to work there. It's been almost 7 years now. Um, my sensitivity has heightened,
Mm-hmm.
over the last couple of years. And I've been um, in my little corner where I work every day, and I can control everything.
Mm. So,
And going back is the idea of it causes me a great deal of anxiety.
are they going to make you go back? Or maybe that woman will be able to let you stay at home if they're open to
I
anything.
there's a lot there. I have multiple reasons why I would really prefer to work from home.
Yeah.
And I the people that I work with, I have known them for 25 years.
Mm.
And because a lot of the same people are there. And I'm blessed. Seriously, I'm blessed because the pandemic has been, I shouldn't say the pandemic, the what comes along with the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
has been really difficult
Mm-hmm.
on some people, me included.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And being isolated, I don't know. Like I said to a friend of mine, I'm like, is agoraphobia really a problem if you enjoy it? And and she's like, well, I think that's something a trained psychologist would probably be able to help you with. And she was laughing at me, knowing that I actually am seeing a trained psychologist.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But it honestly, to answer your question, I think that I'll be able to stay home for as long as their grace allows me to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I can't, then I'm going to have to suck it up. And then I'm going to have to make do. Just like I have had to all of my life. But that being said, I'm blessed because I have people in my life who do show me the grace.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, including my husband, who, oh my God, we live in this old farmhouse and I've got this wonderful porch and I love rainstorms. I mean, I
Oh yeah.
love rainstorms. I grew up with a porch, and I can remember sitting out there and just the driving rain that we would have.
There were a couple good ones this year.
And
I don't know if they made it to southern Minnesota, but yeah.
So here I'm out there and there's a drain pipe that comes down off the second story. That would even just from morning dew.
Oh yeah, do that constant
it would
ticking.
thunk,
Yeah.
thunk, and I couldn't sit out there. And we've been here for a year and a half, and I just, and I wouldn't say anything, but the second it would start, I would be in the house. It was obvious.
Right.
And my husband here a couple of weeks ago, we were in Menards and he said, let's go over and get some flashing. And he got some flashing and then he got up on the roof.
Yeah.
And he took care of it for me. And that is love. That is love because he doesn't understand this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He just can't really wrap his brain around it. But he loves me enough to
just fix it. And do the one time take the small step to just make your life a lot easier.
One little thing is just like, that's what love is.
And
So
yeah, no, that's great. That's as much as we can hope for in somebody. So that's great that you found that. Um,
yes.
did you said you were seeing a psychologist? Was that related to the misophonia, or was that just kind of general stuff? Or
I think it's just everything.
hmm
This has really been the misophonia is just one part of, I don't know, I feel is just enlightenment of getting older.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? The understanding of it, being able to find a word for it, is just one more way of me understanding what my life's been, what has driven me, trying to get some bearings. Because, like I said, this time in our history it's just not been kind to me.
Mm,
Um, and I, I'm amazed by how defining this condition wound up being without my even knowing
what it
that I
was?
had.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And once I understood, so much kind of made sense because you look at children and the trauma. I mean, what trauma does to them,
Mm-hmm.
and what the after effects as an adult is, and I experienced that, through just rampant alcohol and drug abuse, and
Mm,
I had the late 70s, early 80s. I had my fun.
yeah.
It wasn't necessarily emotionally healthy fun, but um and I could never kind of correlate because I had a wonderful life. I had a beautiful childhood. My parents loved me. They provided for me. I they were a constant presence, and a positive presence as far as I'm concerned, even if it's not as lovey-dovey as what you see in the world now.
Right.
But so I could never understand, and I would have it suggested to me that, asked if I'd ever been abused or anything. No, never. But once I started understanding what this condition has done in my life, that's where my trauma was.
Wow. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, like, because you'd mentioned the alcohol and drug usage. Was that as you were getting older, kind of, did you turn to that as kind of a coping mechanism? It seems like you're still trying to figure that out and trying to,
It very well could be.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll let you know in a couple of years after I've hopefully achieved some more understanding.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. So, right. Because we talked earlier about how you yeah that in that kind of those decades or years, this stuff wasn't really talked about. You're supposed to suck it up, but at the same time you had everything provided for you. At least you were in a loving
Yeah.
household. There was that snoring and then other, I'm assuming other sounds, and we talked about how you were kind of struggling with obviously wanting to love your father but also kind of hating him at the
Yeah.
same time.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How do you deal with that?
And then you got puberty coming
Yeah.
up, and yeah, it's kind of like a powder keg. And then the next thing is, yeah, getting independence, and that's when you can make decisions on doing things that your friends are doing, and probably starting to use substances. Yeah, that's interesting. You also mentioned that you around did you were saying that, or kind of your misophonia kind of dipped a little bit around 20 years old or something, or uh
Excuse me. I'm sorry. What was that?
oh, I see. You say you said I thought you said earlier that maybe your misophonia started to kind of like ebb a little, go away a little bit around when you were 20, or
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't recall it being such
I've heard
a
that before
presence.
too. Yeah, that around
Yeah.
that kind of like early adulthood, that it kind of plateaus a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting. I remember. Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think pregnancy kind of brought out like more OCD-ness
Mm-hmm.
in me, which I kind of am assuming that it kind of goes together a little bit.
I've heard that as a
Um,
comorbidity pretty often. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's it's frequently together. But the noise issue. Well, no, my ex-husband had a fan that I really didn't like. Uh, but again, it's not, it's not anything that at the time I was thinking, okay, this is a condition. I always thought of it as a quirk. I never
Yeah.
put it all together until the last couple of years. That is all, it's not just a fan, it's the noise and how my brain processes it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did the substance stuff kind of like die off, or were you able to kind of like just kind of lower that or get over that? I'm curious how if that.
Oh, dear Lord, do you want the honest answer?
Yes, please.
Oh, dear Lord, my first husband, I met him in rehab.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, yeah, such a bad plan. There is a reason they say not to get involved for like
Mm,
a year
mm,
afterwards because yeah, it was such a bad plan. Um, but I've had I've had my struggles. I do not completely abstain
mhm.
because I don't necessarily. Oh, this I can just even hear how this is sounding. You know, there are people who are, as they say in AA, constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves.
Mhm.
And I have met people over the years who, for whatever reason, they are so driven. Um, and I bartended for 8 years, so it's like I literally got to see it.
Mhm.
And then there are people who self-medicate
Yeah.
to some degree all of their lives. I would say I'm that way. I would say most people, are that way. And they are medicating with a variety of things, whether it be drugs or alcohol or food or sex or.
Right, some vice like that to kind of like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to
So that's kind of where
distract
I'm
you.
at. That's
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I very rarely drink. I hate being hungover.
Oh
I
yeah.
hate being I hate being out of control. I don't do drugs,
Yep.
anymore. I don't consider pot a drug.
Mhm.
Um, I'm very pro cannabis.
Yep.
Um,
Does that help you?
I'm horrible.
Um.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Okay.
for sure. Oh yeah. It is like Xanax without the benzo
Mm.
horror.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah. It just yeah.
yeah, because some people it can make you paranoid. I guess it depends on which what kind of strain or whatever that you're using. But yeah, I'm always curious what people's experiences are with pot and
Well,
misophonia.
yeah, I grew up in the state of Kentucky, and that was their number one cash crop back then. Um, and in the 70s, everybody smoked weed.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I smoked weed, and I still occasionally smoke weed.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly don't think that there's a single thing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in college, I even wrote a paper on what was the best customer at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Was it somebody who drank? Was it somebody who drank and smoked pot? Or was it somebody who smoked pot? Or someone who did nothing?
Mm.
So,
And
the moderate drinker, pot smoker, was the best. They left me the most money in tips. They drank and ate the munchies, and they didn't ever, ever, ever start fights.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And what about so you said you found out recently that they had a name and whatnot. Did you go back to family members, your kids, your parents, and tell them, hey, this is the real deal? Apologize now. Just kidding. But,
God, no. Oh my God, no. I'm trying to picture saying that to my mother. She'd be like, tough shit. And rightly so. Because she did the best she could.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They wouldn't have understood this.
Right.
Honestly, They wouldn't have understood it. And what what are they going to do? Move my dad out of the house? There was no place you could go without him here, without hearing him.
Yeah.
And you've got three kids and you're trying to live your life, and I shouldn't say it not that way, but raising three kids in the late 60s, early 70s is a different experience than it is now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I can guarantee you they did not have the resources to to handle a child who had this type of condition to the extent that we would all like to see that be able to happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have all the resources that you have now at your fingertips. It's harder.
No.
It's harder to get stuff back then. Harder to contact people. Harder to meet people.
Harder to meet people. Harder to take time to be able to take your child to doctor's appointments and everything. My mom didn't drive.
Mm. What do your kids think now? Have you mentioned it to them?
My son is very, very similar. My daughter, I do not have. I don't really have a relationship with.
Mm.
I believe someday that'll change.
Yeah.
But for now, I would guess. I'm not even going to put a guess out there. But my son really, it's interesting listening to him talk about just the things that affect him. And it just really has made me so much more aware.
So he's got misophonia
just so much more aware of what I had, things I haven't thought about in years.
Yeah. So he's also got misophonia? It seems like
some measure of it, yes. Yeah. Some measure of it, yes. He's got different things he just can't handle.
Yeah.
He also has sensory as well as I do. Like there's certain things I can't touch.
Okay. Yeah. Some tactile sensory. I don't know if there's a name for that, but I'm assuming visual as well. Things bother you.
I have a hard time with like artificial wind blowing on me. I don't like it. Like fans, I don't like fans at all. I mean, I'll lay there and sweat to death before I will have a fan blowing on me because I just makes my skin crawl. No.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't heard that one, but I could see how that's a kind of an unwanted force. I can see how that could feel like an unwanted force or something on you.
I don't know what it is, but I know that I will actively avoid it.
Is your son your first child, second child?
Second child.
Okay.
Second child, and he is. I don't know in your family, but like in my family, my one brother, he's my mom's. They are so similar, and that's the same way with me and my kids. My daughter, she is her dad.
Good.
She has got her dad's temperament. I mean, not that she doesn't have stuff for me too, but she's got her dad's temperament. And when I was pregnant with my son, I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, this one's mine. This one's mine," and he is. We are very, very similar.
Did your daughter was your first child? I'm just curious if maybe she saw more of your maybe misophonia reactions, and maybe there was some conflict there.
She received the brunt of it.
Yeah,
she received the brunt of it.
You think that probably maybe had an effect for this kind of current, I don't know, distance to some extent? Or
one of many. One of many things.
Gotcha.
Yeah, one of many things. I gotta tell you, it's interesting having. I feel I have 1 foot in my mom and dad's generation and 1 foot in current.
Yeah.
And you do what you know. When you raise children, unless you have had a whole lot of therapy, you do what you know. We all do. And So she was on the receiving end of the parenting I had, coupled with all of the stresses of, single mom, terrible relationship with the ex-husband,
Yeah.
constant fighting. My poor kids, yeah.
Yeah. No,
But again, I did the absolute best I could.
yeah, there's no playbook, especially when,
Yeah.
yeah, everyone grows up differently, brings different baggage into, what they're going to bring to their kids. So I totally understand. And I mean, just getting kind of mathematical. I mean, you're 55. You are kind of between two generations. You're between,
I am.
kind of between baby boomers and Gen X. I would say
Yeah.
so. So you kind of have seen a lot of different approaches. It sounds like some of them healthy, some of them less healthy.
It's hard to transition.
Yeah.
I said earlier that, there's still that side of me that goes, what are you doing? You are being such a whiner. Suck it up. It's just, this is stupid.
You're not the only one. I mean,
But
even
the other side of me goes, no, wait, it
yeah.
really isn't. And trying to live like it was stupid caused me so much harm.
Yep. And yeah, that's the reason. That's one of the reasons, honestly, why I do the podcast, is because we're more than just a couple lines of ranting on Facebook or Reddit. There's a lot of things to learn from our experiences and how crazily similar some of them are, even though we could be raised in completely different environments, have different backgrounds. So there's something here. And your note, or your note on hormones is really interesting. I hadn't heard anyone kind of make that connection, but I'm hoping researchers listening will maybe think about that. Yeah,
that is a large percentage of the reason why I reached out to you. Because I hadn't heard that addressed, and I am truly convinced. And my general practitioner, whom I've been seeing her for almost 30 years now, and she works in a women's clinic, and she's well versed with hormonal changes in women and menopause. And when I shared with her what I've been experiencing and how detrimental it is to my life, she told me that it is not unusual. It is not unusual for women to have, I don't want to say auditory issues, but that's what you think of. I can't tell you how many people have told me I should see an audiologist. I'm like, yeah, no, this is not a hearing thing.
Right.
I hear just fine.
Right.
Yeah. So she said that she sees it. She sees it. She told me I was not the first person.
Really? Okay. So your GP
to sit in her chair.
Yeah.
And tell her that, and although she did not know that there was a name for it, she didn't even know.
I'm wondering if
it just,
yeah, I mean, totally, yeah, I could totally see a connection with hormones and this, but I'm also curious if she's coincidentally seeing just a bunch of misophones as well. Yeah, well, I'm glad at least you probably told her what the name of it was, and maybe she'll do a little bit more research and maybe
possibly, but it is amazing how many. I mean, nobody knows what this is.
No, right.
Even in mainstream medicine.
Oh, especially in mainstream medicine, they don't know what it is.
Yeah. I mean, it's just.
The fascinating thing is, like you said, it's like a lot of us who even know what it is. We're also kind of conflicted as you are. Should I be making a big deal about this, or no? Yeah, it is a real thing. So we have that. We have kind of a Jekyll and Hyde personality in multiple ways. The anger sets us off, but also there is also the self-doubt. I mean, I'm convinced it's something, but yeah, I also catch myself thinking, should I really be freaking out about this?
Yeah, I pick and choose. I shouldn't say I pick and choose. There are I do pick and choose how much I'm going to ask someone else to restrict their behavior for my comfort.
Right.
That's what I pick and choose on. My husband loves to eat almonds. Loves to eat almonds. I could beat him about the head every time he does it. Our compromise, I'll sit and then the side that is facing him, I put in the noise canceling earbud.
Yep.
And then I can get through a meal. And he's become, aware. So now he tries to maybe be in the other room.
Mm-hmm.
And that took me 2 years for me to be okay with him doing that. Because I'm like, this is stupid. Let the man eat his nuts.
That'll be the title of this podcast. Let the man eat his nuts.
Yeah, let the man eat his nuts. That is 100% what it should be. Because there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to sit down and eat something without his wife shooting daggers at him and then running from the room.
So you didn't tell him to move to the other room. He, over the course of 2 years, ended up in the other room.
Actually, we fight over he's going, and I'm like, no.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And in a couple of years, he'll be on the porch, and then maybe on the roof, and then.
He loves me, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
I am a very, very fortunate woman. Very fortunate woman. But this was after, at one point, literally having to sit down and look at him and going, I need you to believe me. Yeah, I need you to believe me because this is real. And there's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, those are powerful words that many of us are unable to say because we either don't even know it has a name or feel bad about it. But I need you to believe me. Those are strong words. It looks like they've kind of paid off for you, and that's great.
Because I'm blessed.
Yeah.
Because I am blessed.
Well, on that note, we're about. You notice how this flies by, even with my computer crashing.
It did.
Anything you for now? Anything you kind of want to share with people who are listening?
I don't know. I don't know.
The hormone thing is probably the biggest thing. I think that's probably enlightening to a lot of people.
The hormone thing is the biggest thing that I really wanted to put out there.
Yeah.
That it is, I feel, such a big factor. For me, I let this be as much of a factor in my life as I let it. I mean, I have to do the best I can. And I think we all do.
Yep.
So
that's a great note to end on. Joannie, thanks for coming on. Maybe we'll pass by on the highway somewhere in southern Minnesota. If you see a Kia Telluride, then that might be me. But
awesome.
Yeah, it's great to come on. Great to get your insights. This is there's some really new things I heard, and I hope it was good for you too. And I know a lot of listeners will enjoy this.
Okay. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Joannie. Lots of stuff to think about there, and I do hope maybe some researcher or other professional thinks about or has maybe already looked into the possibility of a hormonal connection with misophonia. If you liked this episode, don't forget to leave a quick review or just hit the 5 stars wherever you listen to this podcast. You can hit me up by email at hello@misophoniapodcast.com or go to the website misophoniapodcast.com. It's also even easier just to send a message on Instagram at Misophonia Podcast in my DMs. You can follow there, or Facebook, or Twitter at Misophonia Show. And finally, remember you can always support the show financially if possible by visiting the Patreon page at patreon.com/Misophonia Podcast. Music, as always, is by Moby. And until next week, wishing you peace and quiet.